Hi guys, it's Kathy. So we're going to day 6 p.m. We have that. We have a day 6 p.m. Um, and I don't know. The more I look at this child, the more I wonder. I feel like that maybe things would go differently throughout the whole trial and everything if one of these lawyers wasn't just so annoying. Why do they have to keep repeating themselves? Why do they have to keep like harboring on things that don't matter? I'm waiting. Okay, maybe it does matter where they parked that car. Maybe, but hopefully they show it soon because if I'm a juror, I'm just annoyed at both of them. So I guess that makes them on equal footing because they keep repeating themselves over and over, asking these questions that nobody knew where they were from the aerial photo. Nobody. Nobody could pick out look at the aerial photo and say where they were. And when the first person couldn't do it, maybe that was your sign to stop going down that road. How many more people are they going to bring up and say, "Hey, where were you on the aerial road? Where's the first gate? Where's the second gate? Where are the letters?" I mean, if they wanted to prove the point that it was so far away or there was stuff in the way or whatever, prove the point. But I don't know what they're trying to prove with all this. It's just annoying. It's just making the trial go longer. But, let's see. Let's see what happens today. Maybe they'll prove a point today. I don't think so, but let's see.
Thank you. Please have a seat. All right, we're back on the record. Record show the presence of the defendant and counsel. The jury is absent. Counsel, can we grab these, please?
Okay. We're starting day 6 with air. I can hear him. I know I can.
Everybody on?
Yep.
Everybody on? So, the court administrator just informed me that following our discussion before lunch about the visitation issue, media outlets have been calling prolifically, asking me to be present for that. And, she just, the court administrator said basically that'll be up to the judge. I just want to bring that to your attention. I'll hear from you on that. My inclination is a firm no. I'm not going to turn this into a media circus. It's on private property. It's not court in session. So give that some thought. And if you have any objections to that, I'll hear them. But this is going to be, if we pull this off, if it happens, jurors are going to go there. They're going to walk from point A to B to C to D to E to F, whatever it is. No talking, no discussion. Get on the bus and come home. It's going to be tightly controlled and a firm no, unless I hear some very strong persuasive objection about the media being present. So give that some thought. Okay. Okay. You can do it on redirect. Okay. Bring in the jury, please.
She's always the last one to stand when the jury comes in.
You can have the witness come in, actually. Please rise. Thank you. Please be seated. The record will show the presence of all the jurors, counsel, and the defendant, and the witness is retaking the stand. Thank you, doctor. And as soon as the witness is ready and the defense is ready, you can cross-examine.
Dr. Tim, are you settled in?
No.
Now is it?
There you go.
Good afternoon, Dr. Tim.
Good afternoon.
Let's go back over some of the evidence and talk about a few other things that might have been brushed over or not mentioned, okay?
Sure.
Okay. So back on January 30th, you learned that there was a deceased in a possible incident, correct?
Correct.
When did you actually learn of it?
Most likely at the morning meeting on the day of the autopsy.
Okay, and what day again was that?
February 1st, 2023.
Okay, so I know that the body arrives. In what case? In what time period did the body arrive to your location?
I do not know. That would be documented within the case file, but that's not something that I keep track of in my records.
Okay, but is it in the file itself?
Yes.
Do you know where that might be located? Where it might be noted?
Body receival time.
Yes, please. Can you look?
I don't have the case file.
Oh, you don't have the report,
I have my report.
but not the full file.
Correct.
Okay. Now, can you just raise up so I can see the report, the size of the report that you're looking at? It's pretty thin.
There's 7 pages of my report.
Okay. So at this time, Your Honor, I'd like to approach the witness. I have on exhibit, defense exhibit AAA. I just want to show it to her. I have some Post-its in it, so that's just for my references, okay? But can you identify what this full document is? Just look through it, peruse it, and then tell me if you know what it is.
There's an affidavit on the front page. There's a copy of my CV.
Which is very much like a resume for anyone that doesn't know that term, correct?
Yes. There's copy of autopsy report for the decedent. Toxicology report. Looks like the contents of the case file, probably. Fingerprints of the decedent. Identification card, copy of. Copy of a disc. And some photographs.
Do those photographs look familiar?
Yes, they're autopsy photographs for the decedent.
Would that be the ones that you talked about that you took?
Yes. And there's pictures of property, it looks like, and tattoos.
Which were the tattoos were found on the decedent's body?
Yes. And a photograph of the decedent.
Okay. You didn't bring this full file, did you?
That's correct.
Okay, so if you need it for any reason to reference it, please let me know, okay?
Yes.
So you just brought in a few pages of your ultimate findings, right?
I brought in my autopsy report.
Okay, but you're responsible for the other things that were in this full file, right? Like the photos.
Our office is.
Okay, but you took the photos, correct?
I took some of those photos, yes.
Okay, well, you didn't say these were detective photos, did you?
Oh, it is.
No, but there's other people employed in my office that take photographs as well.
But you are the lead in this medical examination of this deceased, correct?
I'm the physician who performed the autopsy.
Okay. And so you also helped with collecting stuff like blood or other fluids of the body, right?
I collected blood for toxicology testing, and vitreous fluid and urine for toxicology testing at the time of autopsy.
And the lab came back and gets put into the file, correct?
The results of the testing are put into a toxicology report that is returned to us and becomes part of the file.
And it was in here, wasn't it?
Yes,
And I'm referencing again, AAA, Defense AAA. So a file is created upon receiving a person for a possible autopsy, and then the different areas come together and work together and create this file, basically. Would that be a simplistic way of saying it?
yes.
Okay. Now, and I do like to keep it somewhat simplistic because, you know a lot, you're a doctor, you have a lot of education, don't you?
I'm a physician.
Okay. A medical doctor, is that the same thing?
Sure.
Okay. And you've never talked to me before, have you?
Nope.
Okay. And you're not angry at me for any reason, are you?
Nope.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, she is.
Now, let me understand something. You did your work, started conducting your work, you said on February 1st, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And yet the deceased was probably transferred upon death and brought to your department, your office. Would that be fair to say?
Can you repeat the question, please?
If police department, law enforcement suspect some foul play or something and want to get an autopsy, they're going to probably bring it directly to your organization?
Yes.
Okay. And so January 30th, a body was discovered, and then somewhere within hours or whatever happened, the medical examiner's office would receive it either later on January 30th or very early on January 31st, correct?
Yes.
And I'm going to assume that a body is placed in a cooler of some sort, correct?
Typically, yes.
Okay. And it's an individual cooler. I've never been to your establishment, but where the body is laying on a table and slides into this cooler?
It's not an individual cooler, large walk-in cooler.
Okay. How do you keep bodies separated?
They're in body bags on individual tables.
Okay. And they all are ID'd, I would assume, correct?
No. We have a lot of unidentified individuals.
Do you give it a number?
Yes.
Okay. So it is ID'd in some format, whether you know who they are before or something that you do internally, correct?
They're given an identification number, yes.
Okay. I didn't say name, ma'am. I said ID'd. Okay. So identification, ID is short for identification, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And so that's so you don't mix up bodies and get the wrong results, correct?
Yes.
I mean, that wouldn't be very good if you had results of someone else's autopsy for this body. That wouldn't be very good, would it?
No.
So there are internal controls to prevent that. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Now, does the fact that, and I don't know, I'm going to rely on your expertise here. Does the fact that a body that's placed in some form of cooler, does that change the timeline of things that one would expect to see as you go through the breakdown of decomposing upon death?
What was the question?
Does the refrigeration, the cooler, help change or alter or prevent anything about the decomposing of a body after, passing on?
Bodies are cooled to slow the decomposition process.
Thank you. Okay, so isn't it true, though, that there are a process of decomposing that happens upon death of each of us?
Decomposition occurs after death.
And that is a changing process?
It's a process of decomposition.
And does it stay the same or does it change?
In comparison to what?
Well, how about overall appearance, overall temperature, all the things that you think about when it comes to rigor, stuff like that?
I'm not sure what the question is.
When a person passes, does the body change through the different process that the body goes through, whether it's rigor, body temperature, and other things that you might expect to see as the body starts to decompose?
There are through after death that are part of the decomposition process.
Okay, thank you. All right, let's start off. What was the time of death on this, please?
The time of death is 1824 hours.
Okay, so you in this report notes that it's 1824 exact, correct?
That's the time of death.
Okay. And what is, let's clarify for anyone, one that is not military time savvy, what does 1824 mean?
6:24 p.m.
Okay. And what does it mean by exact?
That's the time the body was pronounced dead.
Okay. And 1824 is 6:24 p.m., not a.m., correct?
PM.
And do you know where that comes from?
The pronouncement time
Yes, please.
is when someone has notified the overseeing agency that has someone that pronounces them dead.
Okay.
I'm not sure what happens in Santa Cruz County, who pronounces death here.
Okay. Now, you testified that you gather information and the state asked you some questions.
Guess what I just noticed? I bet you all noticed it earlier. There's a skeleton in front of that the yellow dolly that we always see. There's a skeleton.
About it. Hold on one second. And then you try to basically, take this information that you gather and then determine how it fits with what your findings are, right?
Generally speaking, yes.
Correlating was the word that the state used. You remember that?
Yes.
And you defined it?
Yes.
Okay. And when you saw, I'm gonna call him Gabriel because I think it's easier for you to say it too. The deceased named Gabriel. Were you able to determine when you looked at the body how long has the body been dead? I mean, are you able to assess if that's an accurate time?
That's the time of pronouncement.
Okay. What did you find?
I documented the post-mortem findings in that the body was cold, fully fixed in the muscles of the jaw and extremities, and there was faint fixed pink livor mortis over the posterior surface of the body, except in areas exposed to pressure.
And what does that tell you?
So those are the postmortem changes that are examined on the decedents that come into our office. Upon death, people cool to ambient temperature. So if you're in a warmer environment, your body is going to eventually cool to the temperature of that environment. The muscles become fixed after people die, and that's the rigor mortis. They become fixed up into a point in which they reach their maximum fixed. And when I say fixed, it means that if you try to manipulate the body, you won't be able to, or you'll have to use great force to counteract the fixation of those muscles in that position. So there's a certain point where it's going to reach its maximum, and then it's going to start to fade away again. And then the third is the lividity or livor mortis, which is the pooling of the blood after death. It is the discoloration that you see, can be misinterpreted for bruising, but it's really just like a purplish pink color of the blood pooling on the dependent surfaces. So gravity plays a role there in which you see that discoloration, but blood cannot pool in areas that are up against something firm. So you'll see areas of pallor or paleness that are up against a firm surface, so the blood can't come there. Up until about 12 hours, when you push on it, it will push away, and so it blanches. After around 12 hours, after you push on it, it won't go away. So these are all things that we examine to help understand how long someone may have been dead, with the caveat that they are all variable from individual to individual, and they're influenced by environmental factors. They're influenced by why the person is dead. So someone who is...
Okay, let me ask you another question. That was very thorough, thank you. But let's break that down a little bit. That's a lot of information for people that don't understand the science like you know it. So the question was going back to when you get to see the body, when you started to perform your autopsy, which of those levels or timelines was this body at that point in time when you started?
Well, we know that the body was pronounced dead. at 6:30, then 6:24 the night prior. I did the autopsy at 8:30 a.m. And the body had been in a cooler, and I document the body is cold.
So does that not make it difficult to know about the hour timeline that has taken place? Let me give you an example. Maybe this will be more clear for you to understand me. My understanding is if the body's warm and stiff, that may represent a certain amount of hours, say 3 to 8 hours. Don't know if I'm exact, correct me if I'm not right. So the fact that the body's been in the cooler, how would you know if it's been within 3 to 8 hours, if that was true?
Typically, if that's a concern, that's something that should be assessed at the scene. If there is a concern as to the time of the injury versus the time of death, that would be something that would be assessed at the scene because.
So let me ask you about that, because that's a good point. If time was an issue, okay, could someone get to you being the medical examiner, okay? Could someone, law enforcement, get to you expressing the urgency in determining the time by having you look at the body, urgent?
We employ a team of investigators, medical legal death investigators, that respond to scenes where there's people that are deceased that will examine the postmortem changes and document that. That's in Pima County.
Okay, in the event they used your county for hypothetical purposes, if that was an issue before law enforcement, they could get someone to either come out to the scene or look at the body as upon its arrival. How would that might look like?
I mean, I imagine they could make a request for somebody to respond to a scene.
Okay.
But again, these findings are variable and it's not an exact science.
I understand that, but if you put a body in a cooler, you're taking away any chances of having some sort of estimate of time that the body has been deceased, correct?
In assessing exact postmortem changes, that's not even an exact science.
I understand, but there's usually a range that goes with it. For example, if the body's warm and stiff, some of the research that I've seen says it could be 3 to 8 hours. If that was true, let me go to the next one. Correct me anywhere where I'm just totally off. If the body is cold and stiff, now you might go from 8 to 36 hours. And then the last one is an example. If it's cold and not stiff, now you've gone past that rigor stage and now you're at 36 plus hours. So it is a range, correct?
Yeah, those are ranges that I've seen in the literature.
Okay. And so by putting a body into the cooler, so to speak, I'm sure you have a better name than I do. You're altering the potential of showing the warmth of that body, meaning the body might be fresh within, if those numbers were correct, 3 to 8 hours, rather than now being altered with a cooler that might show it's cold and stiff, changing the times from 8 to 36. Isn't that possible?
Yeah, it's going to be cooled because it's in a cooler, but we
Right.
also know there's a passage of time.
So
Right.
when someone just gets put into the medical examiner's, placed into the cooler until the time of the autopsy is performed, we're losing potential information of biological indicators of time of death. It's possible, right?
It's being slowed, yeah.
Okay, it's being slowed by the cooler, but now we have altered what's natural.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. So all you could go with is a time that someone reported the time of death to you,
That's-
correct?
The time of death is the time of pronouncement, yes.
Okay. And so just to conclude this area of topic, you have pronouncement, but you can't tell me the approximate time of death of the deceased, Gabriel, in this case, right?
Not exactly, no.
Okay. Would you concur that the time of death could have been 6 something? 6:24?
That's the time of death, yes.
So, but medically, through your assessment, are you comfortable with that time?
That's the time that he was pronounced dead, so yes.
I'm asking medical inquiry to the time of death through your evaluation. Does it seem, you said that you go through this process of evaluating what you learn and what you observe. I'm asking, what did you observe? Does that seem reasonable?
Yes, it doesn't seem like he was been dead for 4 days.
Okay, but 6:24 is a reasonable time. That's all I'm asking.
Yes.
Thank you. So in Pima County, just in case, I'm sure everyone here has lived here forever, but what city is Pima County out of?
Tucson is in Pima County.
Okay, and is that where the office is located?
Pima County Medical Examiner's Office is in Tucson.
Thank you very much. Now, you said you had numerous people there watching the autopsy, correct?
Correct.
Detectives, the prosecutor. Do you have help with staff while you're conducting it?
Yes.
How many people do you normally have help you?
Typically 1 or 2.
Okay, and just basically, what's their role?
Doing the paperwork, printing off labels, putting labels on body fluids that I collect, helping with collection of evidence, doing the evidentiary form, releasing the evidence to the investigating agency, maybe helping with photographs if their gloves are clean and mine are dirty, and helping with the evisceration process and the returning of the organs to the body and sewing the body up, transporting the body to and from the cooler, and helping with anything else that I might need along the way.
Okay. So it's sort of like if you were a surgeon and you would have physician assistants or nursing that would be assisting in you overseeing and doing your medical procedures, correct?
Yes.
Now, on your findings, you list 2 points. Can you revisit those 2? What are they?
Perforating gunshot wound of trunk with skeletal, soft tissue, vascular, and visceral injuries. And Roman numeral 2 is cutaneous abrasions and contusions.
Okay, I think we talked a little bit about the first finding. What is the second finding about?
There were other injuries that I noted and documented on the skin.
And you explained in the process that you go through an autopsy that the first thing you do is like an assessment of the outer parts of the body, correct?
Correct.
And I would assume that's when you noted some abrasions.
Correct.
And in layman's terms, is an abrasion like a scraping of the skin?
Yes.
Okay. Just like a skin knee would be an abrasion?
Correct.
Okay, so something that scrapes against it caused some kind of markings, correct?
Or it's
Contacts each other, but it causes the scraping,
correct.
right? And so, let's see here. Where in your report do you have noted some abrasions?
Under evidence of injury section
Okay, can
on
you,
page 4.
on page 4, can you please tell us out loud what are those locations?
On the bridge of the nose, on the right forearm, the left knee, and the front of the left leg.
Now, when you say the front, I imagine there's the part above the knee and a part below. Did you note it in any particular location? Upper leg or lower leg?
Well, it's the thigh and the leg. The thigh is above the knee, the leg is below the knee.
Thank you. I can't remember my signs that well. Thank you. I'd like to approach this witness, Your Honor, with defense PP, Paul. Okay, can you please look at these photos yourself? There's a few of them in there. Turn the pages, look at them, and see if you can identify these photos.
Yeah.
Okay, and what do they depict?
Pictures from the autopsy.
From the what, ma'am?
The autopsy,
Okay, and does it reflect the locations of these abrasions that you were noting?
the first picture corresponds to the second injury on the right forearm. The second picture corresponds to the fourth and fifth injuries on the left knee and leg. The third picture corresponds to the first injury on the nasal bridge, as does the fourth picture.
Okay, so these photos accurately depict the photos that you or someone in your team took of these abrasions, correct?
And contusion.
And contusion. Okay, at this time, Your Honor, I'd like to enter into evidence PP, defense PP.
PP is admitted.
Permission to publish.
Granted.
What are we looking at? And we'll call this a first photo in my stapled group here. What are we looking at on this one?
In the middle of the screen is the abrasion on the right forearm. The hand is going to be on the right side of the screen as you're looking at it. And the shoulder elbow region would be towards the left side of the screen.
All right, and let the record reflect that I've pointed towards the hand, which is looking at the screen to the right, and to the left would be the rest of the arm, correct? So this is just above the wrist,
Correct.
okay? Kind of, would the hand be kind of flat if you were taking the picture?
It looks like the palm is facing down and the back of the hand is facing towards the top of the screen.
So this appears to be the side arm above the wrist,
The forearm,
the forearm, thank you. Side of the arm above the wrist, the forearm,
side of the forearm.
thank you. Let me show you the next photo.
Can someone please explain to
Okay.
me how this
What are we looking at?
proves Kelly's
here?
guilt or innocence in any way?
We'll call this B.
On the left side of the screen is the thighs with the knees, and then the anterior surface of the legs and the feet. The left leg is towards the top of the screen, the right leg is towards the bottom of the screen. And you can see an area of red, purple discoloration. That is the injury right on the left knee, as well as an additional area on the anterior surface of the left leg.
Would that be it here?
Correct.
Okay. So I pointed to the left knee, and below that, another injury, and nothing on the right side?
That's correct.
Now, we've seen this with the state's exhibit, but since it's in my packet, I'm going to show it again. And we'll move to C. What are we looking at here that you've seen before?
This is a front picture of the decedent's face, and you can see the area of injury on the bridge of the nose.
All right, blew up the picture or zoomed it in. And am I pointing in the right direction on the bridge of the nose?
Yes.
Thank you. Apologize to have to show the jurors all this, but I'm going to give the last one in this group, D. What are we looking at here?
This is a right lateral picture of the face.
Okay. And does it also show and reflect the nose
Yes.
and the injuries being up in this area right here where I'm pointing?
Correct.
And these are abrasions?
That's an abrasion, yes.
Okay. A bruise is usually from impact, right? And it caused some form of bleeding under the skin?
A bruise is a contusion, which is also a type of blunt force injury.
So a contusion is bleeding underneath the skin that rises, allows us to see off-color.
A contusion is bleeding underneath intact skin.
Okay, so there's no open wound usually with a contusion.
Not with a straightforward contusion, no.
Okay. But an abrasion is more not of a direct impact, but more of a scraping of, correct?
It's blunt force injury, so it just has a different appearance. It's the loss of the superficial layer of skin.
Okay.
That's an abrasion or a scrape.
And something causes that resistance to cause it to have that appearance versus just a bruise, correct?
They're both a result of blunt force injury, blunt trauma.
Right.
Something impacting the body or the body impacting something blunt.
But if I fall and skin my knees, it's because it scraped along the pavement or whatever versus just fell direct down, which might just cause bruising, correct?
There's different variables that play a role in it. If it's against a rough surface and it just fell down, you still may have an abrasion from it.
Can dragging cause an abrasion?
Yes.
When the body comes in, is the body naked or do you have clothing on it as it was, when it arrives?
It depends on where the body comes from.
So in this case, do you know if the body was clothed before you did your job?
Yes, the body was received clothed.
So if there was a photo that showed tears in the clothing and underneath it an abrasion, does that support the fact that there could have been like skinning the knee, that type of injury?
Yes.
In other words, if there's a tear above the abrasion, then it supports that something came in contact with resistance to that area, correct?
Yes.
Thank you. Did you note any of that in your observations, or was that not your job to do that?
I don't look at clothing.
Okay. So you have no idea if this body has been dragged. You can't say one way or the other, correct?
Correct.
But it's possible?
Yes.
Okay. Now, but did you testify about clothing and the bullet defect and a regular defect? Did you have some testimony about that?
Not that I recall.
Okay. Let's talk about directionality of these bullet holes that you've observed. You don't know which way the subject would have been standing or sitting or doing whatever. You're not here to testify you have any knowledge of that, correct?
Correct.
Okay. What about the angle of this wound? Are you here? You do know there was an angle from the entrance to the exit, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Your Honor, may I do a demonstrative thing with the court?
With what?
The
My new friend.
skeleton. We get to see the
We're going to
skeleton.
bring out,
Any objection
Not a
from the school?
toy. Who's this guy? Look, look.
let's put it in the center.
He's hers. That's who he is. We think he's her helper.
I'll take that.
So very, very, very hard trying to figure out how this is going to help her prove any innocence.
I doubt it. I'm not sure though.
But it is anatomically correct from what you can see, correct?
The skeletal system, yes.
So I'm a visual person. I know jurors can be too. So what I'd like to ask if you would step down from your seat and help demonstrate this, okay?
Sure.
Let's get
Get down off your high horse, lady. No, I like this doctor. I do. The lawyer tries to twist the words and she won't allow it. She just sticks to facts, nothing but the facts.
Well, we're going to use this rod, and I want you to point out, let you hold it while you start your talk. You talked about some damages or beveling of the ribs. Let's back up a little bit. Explain beveling one more time.
Beveling is a fracture pattern seen on flat bones.
What does that mean? Why does it do that? Why do you have that pattern?
It's the way the bullet passes through the flat bones and pushes the surface of the bone with it.
Okay, sometimes beveling is almost like a polishing type thing that it does to it. Is that similar or something different?
I'm not familiar with that.
Okay. Is it a direct impact or a skimming of that location cause beveling?
It can be both.
Okay. Now, when you talk about rib numbers, how do you count ribs to know which rib we're talking about?
From the top down.
Okay. And you said there was an entrance wound where? Rib number, and you need to look at your report, we can get that for you.
Yeah, I don't have it memorized. Posterolateral right something. Posterolateral right 6th through 8th ribs.
Okay. Point right now where that would be.
These 3 ribs here, 6, 7, and 8. This is kind of the posterolateral region. And these ribs.
Still kind of high up, depending on the size of the person, right?
I don't have an opinion to that.
Okay. Now, where is the exit wound?
Anterior left, second, right next to the sternum. It fractured the sternum and this area, the second rib.
Can you put this rod through the location of the entrance as close as you can and show where it would look like if it, where the bullet exit took place? Hold your report.
Roughly in that area.
Now, you named 3 ribs where it entered in.
That's crazy because he was shot from 160 yards away and the bullet went up. Maybe it hit a rib. It hit like one of the ribs on the way in. Maybe she'll tell us. Maybe I should just press play.
Where did you place it between those 3?
Below the 7th.
Now, so you said 6 through 8, right?
Correct.
So you just took the middle rope for that, right?
Yes.
Okay. Why would a bullet hit 3 ribs?
Because of the velocity associated with it.
What about the angle? I'm gonna turn them a little bit just so jurors can see different perspective. If something was lower and went into an upward movement, is it possible that the angle caused the impact damage to more than one rib?
I'm not sure what that question is asking.
If I was down low, shooting upward, is it possible the projectile hit more than one rib, causing the fracture or the break?
You would expect a more direct or upward trajectory for that to happen. It would have come this way, not crossed the line.
Do the ribs and all the bones affect the possibility of a change in the direction? Is that possible?
Fractures and going through bone are going to change the projectile. Yes.
Okay. So once the bullet comes through and hits the body, going past the skin and hitting, say, a rib or a bone, could that alter the change to some degree? Is that what you're saying yes to?
Well, it altered the trajectory from when it was outside the body to when it was inside the body. It now has its own trajectory because of what it's impacted.
Right. And so not only did it hit these 3 ribs by the sign of the injury, right? It went through soft tissue after, right?
Before.
After it hit, okay, it went through soft tissue, then hit the ribs.
Correct.
Okay, then it went through some more soft tissue or organs,
Organs,
like the heart,
lung
lung,
first.
okay, and that's a soft tissue, correct?
Correct.
But ultimately passing through, it hit another set of ribs before it exited, correct?
It hit the sternum and then the second rib.
Okay, tell us what a sternum is.
It's the flat bone or your breastbone. Here is the sternum.
Okay, so let me look and see what you're pointing at. So it's the center bone that kind of connects the ribs and joins them together?
Yeah.
Okay, so if I point to my front right here, what am I likely to be near my sternum?
Yes.
Okay, and I'm illustrating the center mass of my chest. Okay, and so it hits that bone, and then where on this was there another possible fracture or broken bone?
The second rib is broke, so it comes through here, both of them.
And which part of the bone did you notice that injury to?
The anterior, right, parasternal.
Close to the sternum.
Yes.
Versus where on the back, let me flip our diagram. It comes did you notice the injury? Like inner, closer to the spine, outer? Give me an idea there.
Right where I have it, posterolateral.
Okay, that was an easy one for you to put through, because that's where you saw it, right? Correct?
Correct.
Okay. We got a question. All right, you can sit down, thank you. Now, I know you're not here to explain or give explanations, but would it be unreasonable to think that the directionality of this bullet could have been at a lower elevation? Is that possible?
I'm not familiar with bullets in elevation.
But it starts lower, correct? The entrance and proceeds upward, correct?
That's the trajectory through the body.
Right. So if I was sitting right here on the floor, very low, it's possible that it would, just common sense, that it would follow this pattern of entrance and exit, correct?
That's a possibility.
So if someone is at a lower elevation, is it possible? I'm not making you the expert, I'm just speaking with your knowledge and common sense, that this could have been a lower elevation shot that caused it go from down to upward, correct?
If the body was in an upright position, yes.
Okay. And there's other explanations, right?
Innumerable.
Right. And the problem is, you don't know, correct?
I don't know I know the trajectory of the bullet through the body.
Right. And we could see it now with this rod in there, that it starts low and goes high. That we do know, correct?
Yes.
And so all the possibilities that could be out there, we just don't know how this happened, right?
I do not.
Right.
Oh my God.
So with all those words and demonstrations, did we figure out how the bullet is going like up so sharp of an angle? Is it because it hit the rib and then went up? I think that's what she might have said. I think.
Now, you told us and testified about the amount of blood that was retained in this body upon your autopsy, correct?
Correct.
You also talked about a couple of different ways that one might pass. One, you mentioned, like, say they're shot in their head. What does that do as far as longevity of that person?
It's highly variable. People can survive gunshot wounds to the head.
Depends where it is.
Yes.
If a bullet affects the central nervous system, would they be able to abstain for any length of time?
Yes.
How long?
Well, they can live. They can survive gunshot wounds to the brain.
Is it possible that that body would drop immediately?
That's possible, yes.
Okay. And what about if someone is just kind of bleeding out, just got internal organs and causes a bleeding out? Could that be a more of a longevity as far as how long someone can function?
What you're describing is like a hemorrhage.
Yes, internal bleeding, hemorrhage.
Yeah.
Okay.
So people can die pretty rapidly from that. It all just depends on whether aid is rendered and the underlying health conditions that the person has. And there's many variables that affect. One person might die from hemorrhage pretty quickly, and another person might live long enough to have aid rendered and survive it.
Well, I'm not talking about death as much as functioning upon receiving the injury. Okay, with internal bleeding, isn't it possible that a person can continue to walk for some time?
Some people, yes.
Okay. And if a person, it depends on how much they're bleeding. And you testified a little earlier about that. What did you testify about? You talked about it earlier,
About what?
about when someone is bleeding and how long they can last.
It depends on the person and what they're bleeding from.
So if a person can walk 1 mile per hour, for example, all right, something very slow, and then they
Hey.
are bleeding out at whatever rate, is it possible that they can go yards before they fall?
Yes.
Okay. And so with this type of injury, it's different than a spinal column injury or something that might take the person into a position of lights out. You know what I mean? In other words, they have a chance that they may still survive for some X period of time, depending, correct?
They could still have movement versus if there was a spinal cord injury, they would be incapacitated pretty rapidly. This is an aorta injury, which could be a rapid incapacitation, but there's a potential that there may have been movement after as well.
Okay. And that movement could have been feet, maybe even yards, possibility, right?
Yes.
Okay. So just because this person falls down right there doesn't mean that's where they were shot with this type of injury, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And you said that he lost, or you collected 50 milligrams of around the heart, correct? Of blood. Milliliters, I'm sorry. Thank you. And about how much is that in a cup or some other measurement that we can relate to it?
Probably a couple of these.
Okay, can you hold that up for everyone to see? And have raised from your table little like Dixie cup type things that are there for you to have water, right? So you're saying about 2 of those.
Yeah, approximately. I don't know how many ounces these are, but
Okay, and this is around the heart. And then you also testified that in the chest cavity, you also were able to collect 340 milliliters, correct?
correct.
And give me how many cups of those would that be?
Well, 6 times, 7 times.
Okay. Now, the clothing can act like a sponge that's around it, absorbing the blood from the location of a bullet hole, right?
Yes.
And the clothing in this case had some blood on it, right?
I don't recall.
Okay. And have you seen any photos of blood on the ground?
I have not, no.
Would it be surprising to you, based on knowing how this bleeding out is taking place, that there was very little blood on the ground?
I mean, there could be blood on the ground. There could be a small amount, a large amount. I don't know.
And is it possible that the bleeding that you would think you would see could have been all maintained internally in this body?
Yes.
Okay. And that accounts for the large amount of blood that you're seeing in areas that are normally not with that type amount of blood, right?
Correct.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Now, do you remember, when you analyze the outer parts of the body upon the start of your examination, do you look for things and objects that normally would not be normally found there?
Yes.
And did you notice in this case there was lots of debris on or around the body?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Approach the witness. Let me show you. Let me show you what's been marked as, I think it's an OO, defense OO. Does this photo that I'm showing you on top, we'll call it A, reflect the type of debris you found?
I describe it as particulate debris. So I see some particulate debris in the photo, yes.
Okay, and let's skip one more. And does this photo reflect the amount of blood on the clothing that was found and observed by you?
I don't know.
Okay, skip B. Let's go to C. Let's go to D. Again, at the medical examiner's office, is this photo taken? Does it appear to be?
It appears to have a body bag in the background, so yes.
Okay, and does that reflect, again, the particles that was observed with the body upon your examination?
Yes.
Okay, is there more photos in there? And then that, the next one, same thing, just different view?
Yes.
Is that the, and that one?
Yes.
Let's see. You talk to Elsa. All right, at this time, Your Honor, I would like to enter into evidence fence exhibit 00 Henrietta to the state to see what I've taken out.
OO is admitted.
Thank you, Judge. May I publish?
Yes.
Thank you, Judge.
For 1 second there, I thought he said objection, and I thought something exciting was about to happen.
No, I'm good.
Okay, I'm showing you, I'll call it OOA, for a picture of the right hand. Were you aware that the right hand was under the body? Because it was also probably still had, which, you know, the stiffness of that body, right? Did you observe the body being bent, the arm being bent?
No.
So you had no knowledge that this right arm was under the body upon observation of it.
That's correct.
Okay, but I'm going to show you from a photo from your location where the right arm, would you agree it is the right arm, right hand?
This is a picture of the right hand, yes?
Okay. And the debris that the hand is holding, correct?
That's on the hand, yes.
Okay. Which appears to be some kind of straw-like, long, grass-like material, correct?
Some of it, yes.
What else is there?
More granular. Maybe sand or dirt.
Okay. So let's point that out. So
But these
right
small-
on the top, right there,
all over.
all over. Could this, thank you for drawing. Okay. Are you familiar that the terrain was in an environment like that? Did you have any knowledge of that?
Yeah, I mean, most of our cases come from the desert.
Okay. So this reflects that type of environment, correct? All right. Now, there is all kinds of particles kind of stuck to this hand. And there are things in his hand. And that includes this straw-like grass material, correct?
Yes.
And the hand is somewhat closed or clenching in some form, right? That's how the photo was,
There's
right?
some flexion of the fingers in the picture, yes.
Okay. When a person dies, and as the body stiffens, does it stiffen in the position it was last in?
Typically, yes.
In other words, the hand doesn't move while you're dead, right?
Not unless someone moves it.
Okay. And so this could reflect someone, I don't know, being dragged or grabbing onto the environment, correct? Could be.
I don't know how the body had been manipulated. Many variables that affect.
But in my hypothetical, it's reasonable, correct? It's possible.
If the body had laid there for enough time to pass so that rigor mortis had started, then yes.
Okay. But if someone's being dragged and grabs onto things and then passes, the results of it could still remain in the hand, correct?
Yes.
And I understand that's one hypothetical. Let me show you the next photo.
Sure.
So we'll call this B. Again, reflecting the same thing, the same right hand, correct?
Yes.
And the environment kind of sticking to the palm or the top of the hand, correct?
Yes.
And a stick or something being clenched by the hand, correct?
Poking out of the interdigitory space, yes.
Thank you. A little bit different angle, but same shot. My last one, we'll call it C. Any idea? I mean, is this more clenched or just a different angle?
It's all the same to
Okay,
me,
thank
just a little bit different view.
Okay. Now, you mentioned that you get a
Council, it sounds like you're moving into a new area. It's 2:45. This is a good time to take a break.
It'd be wonderful.
Ladies and gentlemen, we'll take our mid-afternoon 30-minute break, and we'll come back and continue with cross-examination.
What did we learn about Kelly? Nothing. Not a thing. Oh gosh. My son's playing Overwatch with his college team. So we're just gonna have to deal with it. There we
Third,
go.
all the jurors are present, counsel and the defendant. You good?
Yes.
All right. And you can continue with your cross-examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. Do you remember we talked about something called stippling?
Yes.
Okay, let's slow that down a little bit and go back over that. What is it?
Stippling is a pattern of injury seen on the skin that's caused by unburnt gunpowder impacting the skin and leaving small punctate red-purple abrasions.
So if I was suicidal and if you look my way for 1 second and put a gun to my head, you would suspect in that scenario that you would see stippling on my scalp somewhere here, right?
No,
No?
I
Why
would
not?
be concerned if I saw stippling.
Okay, tell me why.
Stippling is seen in intermediate range gunshot wounds, not contact gunshot wounds.
Okay, would anything else be left there if it was contact like I illustrated?
Typically, we would expect to see a muzzle stamp or a muzzle imprint.
Okay, so you kept using the word intermediate range. Could you define that range again, please?
It's highly variable depending on the ammunition and the weapon. And the only way to know exactly distance from muzzle to target is to have the same ammunition and the same weapon and do repeated test firings.
Okay,
So when I'm giving numbers, it's general speaking, a couple of inches to typically 1.5 feet. Sometimes you'll see a little bit further.
so if I have a gun in my hand, which I'm using a pen, and I am standing back 3 feet and point a gun at this person, is it possible that you might not see this evidence of stippling? Speak louder.
Typically, you would not expect to see stippling at that range of muzzle to body
Because why?
because gravity would pull the burnt and unburnt gunpowder off prior to it impacting the body.
Okay. So you can't testify that someone wasn't standing in my proximity to the subject. This is the deceased here. You can't testify if me having a very high caliber, let's say some sort of big handgun, pointed at the person like I'm robbing them, okay? It's possible that could have happened too, correct?
Can you repeat or rephrase the question?
Is there any evidence that would dispute that I'm standing here a few feet back from the subject, the deceased, having a handgun, pointing it at him, like as if I was robbing him? Is there anything that would dispute that happening based on your autopsy?
He was clothed.
Pardon?
He was clothed, so I wouldn't expect to see stippling on a clothed body anyhow, because the clothing is going to absorb the burnt and unburned gunpowder.
Okay, that was actually my next question. Thank you. Now let's go back to my question, but that was on my list. I'm going to creep up another small amount of space, okay? I'm holding a pen like it's a gun. I'm saying this for the court reporter. I know you can see what I'm doing. Or King. Is that better?
Sure.
Okay, thank you. And is there anything about your medical examiner report that would dispute the fact that I had a gun, as if I'm maybe I'm robbing the guy or whatever, that would contradict it? Assuming this is a pretty powerful handgun, is there anything that would dispute it that you see in your report?
That the distance of the gun from the body is within where you had it.
Yes.
Is that the question? Yes. No, that's possible.
Okay.
She made a point for Kelly there, finally.
So as you moved on to my next question, and I'm gonna make sure I understand you, having clothing on,
We think,
Yeah, so I didn't hear what the judge was about to say, but he's saying what I'm about to say. She didn't get a chance to rephrase it over and over and over again because she answered it ahead of time. So she's still gonna get there. Nope, the judge ain't gonna let you do that. No, no, no. Move on.
we think your microphone is off.
Oh, sugar.
having
I'm wrong. I thought the judge was gonna shut her down. Asked and answered. Move on.
clothing on you
Oh, she's laughing.
can obstruct any of the stippling from showing up on the body.
Yes, it would show up on the clothing, not the body.
Okay. And that's not something you would do, correct?
That's correct.
That you only deal with the actual body itself.
Yes.
All right, now we're going to go back to, well, actually, let me do this. Your Honor, at this time, I would like to enter into evidence defense AAA, who has already been identified and shown to this witness, which is the full report of the medical examiner's report. I would like to note that it is a medical report. It does identify itself through a affidavit that has been put on there long time ago. And the date of that report actually is, the affidavit is July 19th, 23. And she went through all the pages already to look at it. I peeled off a photo of the subject that I don't think is really part of the report that somehow got attached. So I took that off in all fairness.
Your Honor, I have no objection if the entire report, including the photo that she just took off, was.
You want that on?
It's part of the whole photo. Yes. I would
Okay.
like that.
I have no problem.
No objection, Your Honor.
Where's your terrible one?
Without objection, defense exhibit AAA is admitted.
Thank you, Judge. Permission to publish a small portion of it.
Granted.
Investigator narrative. You did talk about earlier about getting information from law enforcement so that you could look at that information and then correlate with what you see in your examination, correct?
Yes.
And you said you did do it in this case, correct?
Yes, probably.
Okay, and that has come in this report under the form of investigator narrative, because you didn't author that, right?
Correct.
That's what you relied on to get you started, correct?
Yeah, I don't know exactly what it says. Some of it could be prior to examination. Sometimes information comes in after.
Okay, so if you could fall back on it if you need to based on your evaluation, or you could use it to get started.
Correct.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to read it. It's very fine print. Put my flashlight on it. This is January 30th, 23. An unidentified male was reportedly with a group of foreign nationals that were observed by a homeowner on his property. Yes, it's 2 of 5, about 17 down approximately. Indicated that the group was running parallel to the property and had long rifles on their possession. So pausing there for a second, hence your reason to believe that this could have been a rifle, could have came from the investigator, correct?
Possibly, yes.
Okay. Because you would have read this in the beginning at least once, right?
Prior to signing my report, if it was authored on the 30th, yes.
Thank you. He then allegedly pursued the group and engaged them, firing one shot from his AK-47 rifle. Now you've been identified, a type of rifle, right?
Yes,
But only one shot is noted. And you have one shot, right?
correct.
But you didn't hear about the 8, 9 other shots in this case, did you?
I don't know the details.
Okay,
No.
let's keep going. 911 was contacted at 17:56 hours, and the decedent was located by deputies with Santa Cruz County Sheriff's Office at 1823. He was pronounced at 1824 hours by Deputy Lopez. The decedent was, and that's where you get your time, right?
Correct.
The decedent was noted to have a defect to his right posterior, I'm sorry, it's the small print, aspect of the torso, as well as the defect to approximately the center upper anterior torso. No other defects were observed by the time the cause was reported, or the case was reported. Excuse me. To PCOME. However, the decedent had not been manipulated much. Didn't say not at all, it says much, right? Do you hear what I said?
Yes,
Okay. And in
We all
true
did.
best
You're very, very loud.
scenario, you wouldn't want the body to be manipulated in any way, correct?
correct.
In order to preserve the potential evidence. The location of the decedent was in a flat area of the property and was approximately 100 yards from the physical residence. A Mexican voter identification card was located on the decedent with the name and date of birth of 9/26/74. Information was obtained via telephonic interview with Deputy Barba from the sheriff's office. Additional information was obtained via, PCOME, preliminary death form completed by Deputy Barba. So you got all that information from Deputy Barba. Would that be fair to say it came through some sort of communication, teletype internet, some sort of form of technology?
If that's what's documented, yes.
Okay, and that's what I read, correct?
Yes.
And then you just add that to the report, this whole report, that information got added, right?
It's part of the case file.
Okay. And it said that the subject shot one time at this deceased. And so you rely on that as being possibility of what's happened, correct?
Yes.
Just a chance to look at my notes for a second, Judge. Thank you. Was there any, what was the lab results?
Which lab?
Blood work, drugs,
Toxicology?
toxicology?
I don't have that part of the report. It was part of your document, though. The toxicology screening positive findings included delta 9 THC at the level of 2.0 nanograms per milliliter from the femoral blood sample that was submitted to NMS Labs.
What does that mean in English for someone that doesn't know lab work?
It's a metabolite of
So it froze for a second. I don't know why, but we're back. We're back.
Small amount, or does it matter?
the reporting limit is 1.0. It's double that. As far as amounts, I don't have an opinion as to numbers. It's not something I
And
typically.
there's another page, is that, there's nothing else further? Is that all that was found?
That's the only positive finding, correct?
Second to review my notes, Judge.
Denied. Objection. Delay of game. 15-yard penalty. First down.
Pass the witness, Your Honor.
Redirect examination.
Yes, Your Honor. Dr. Tim, are you familiar with marijuana and the breakdown metabolite of marijuana?
Not to the level of a forensic toxicologist, no.
Is THC or delta THC, is that the active ingredient or that's the breakdown of marijuana?
I don't know. Honestly, I don't know.
That's fine. Let me ask you about your report that was entered, this lengthy report that has the photos, the CV, and your findings and the toxicology report. In there, counsel read you the narrative about what was reported to have occurred on the day of January 30th. Remember that?
Yes.
And in that narrative, do you know who Officer Barba received the information from to fill that out? Do you know?
I do not, no.
It could very well have come from the defendant, right? You don't know. No information.
That's correct.
But you do have indication in the report about the use of, I want to make sure I read it right in the report. The use of a certain type of weapon that was used in this case, right? It said an AK-47. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Is the wound that you saw, the entry, the exit, and the damage inside the torso of the victim consistent with an AK-47?
Yes.
I'm going to go to the skeleton real quick. We have a lot of things with this demonstrative device here. One thing, let me just find it for it. I mean, do you have Government Exhibit 14? Thank you. going to show you. It's already been emitted, 14H. You recall that photo?
Yes.
And what, just to remind the jury what that photo is again?
It's the inside of the right chest cavity, the area underlying the entrance wound, and it's showing the multiple rib fractures with the associated hemorrhage and the large defect in the chest wall.
What's that? Oh, yeah, sure.
First, I'm gonna come over to the skeleton here, and we've got this upright, vertical, perpendicular to the ground skeleton, right?
Yes,
And you remember when defense counsel was using a pen to show where a possible entry was going to be conducted from a gunshot? You remember that?
yes,
Right? And this is assuming a lot of variables, correct?
correct.
Assuming the victim is upright, assuming someone is standing kind of right behind the skeleton here, right?
Correct.
And shooting an upward angle with a handgun.
Right.
A lot of assumptions in this case, right?
Many.
In this fact pattern, right?
Yes.
Right. What I want to do though is talk about my 6, 7, 8 ribs, right?
Correct.
Do you mind coming down and doing this again for me? Looking at that photo, 14H. Oh, I have another. Using 14H, remind the jury where that is on the body. So starting below the scapula, is that the scapula? That's the scapula. I know some anatomy. That's the scapula. So 6, 7, and 8, right?
Correct.
Looking at that entry wound or that damage to the rib, explain to the jury the likely entry point or how that bullet comes into that body, the angle of that body.
It's taking out this whole area. It's a large area of defect affecting or fracturing all 3 of these ribs.
And what kind of angle are we talking about when it comes into that body? Is it the way your stick is showing now?
I don't know exactly how the bullet is when it enters the body. I know how the bullet traveled through the body.
Okay, so then walk the jury through. First question is, if it hits a rib, can there be, we've heard the word yawing or deflection. Can there be a possible deflection from that bullet?
Yes, ribs are hard materials. And so once it impacts a rib or 3 ribs, its trajectory is going to be altered in some way, shape, or form. It's not going to be continuing along that same trajectory as it had before it fractures those 3 ribs.
So it's possible, doctor, that a shot from this angle to the victim can hit this rib cage at kind of a level line and deflect upward out through the chest plate.
Yes,
That's a possibility, right?
it is.
Right. You can give me the stick. You can say
That was helpful. That was helpful. I could literally get rid of everything else.
In
today.
addition, doctor,
Just play that for you.
to the skeleton, you got no information about what happened the day of January 30th, do you?
No,
You don't know how many shots were fired, what the victim, there's another victim in the case, what they testified to. You got no information.
no.
So hypothetically, I'm going to give you a hypothetical, right? When most people hear a gunshot, what's the common reaction by most people when they hear a gunshot?
To duck.
To duck. So hypothetically, if someone hears 3 gunshots, their reaction would be
To get low.
to get low, right? And so it's not uncommon for it's not uncommon for this person to be ducking out of the way.
Take cover, yes.
To take cover.
That's even a better point he
You
made.
got no information about the number of rounds fired or which round hit this person, do you?
I do not know.
That's not an uncommon reaction when you hear 3 rounds fire, then to duck or cover, right?
Objection, asked and answered.
Sustained.
She's right, of course, but how dare you? How dare you say that? Objection. How dare you?
We also don't know the variable. We have a stationary skeleton in front of here, right?
Yes.
We don't know if this individual is moving or mobile, do we?
No.
That would change some of the variables in this case, right?
Yes.
Especially if someone's walking, skipping, or even running, that would change trajectory and how that bullet enters the body. and-
Objection, leading.
Sustained.
Would any of those variables impact the
But
bullet with the
she
body?
did the same
Yes.
thing.
We talked about on cross-examination about abrasions. Do you remember those questions? You saw some photographs.
Yes.
And you don't know, you don't have any information from any other witness about what they observed the day of with this victim. Do you?
Objection, leading.
Sustained.
It's just a yes or no. You have no information.
That's leading.
I
Do
do
you-
not.
Wait.
It's a yes or
Hold
no.
on, hold on. First of all, when there's objection, please hold off on the answer until I'm able to rule. It's a leading question. A leading question is a question that suggests the answer.
Do you have any information of what was testified about what happened to this victim on the day of January 30th?
No.
Did you see any photographs of the victim's pants?
Not that I recall. No.
You don't recall the victim's pants if they had holes in them?
No. I don't recall.
Just 1 second, Your Honor. I'm going to show you a photograph in defense exhibit. I want to say it's AAA that's been admitted into evidence. Do you see that photograph?
I do.
Do you see you see the pants, right?
Yes.
Based on the photograph, I can zoom in. Any holes or anything on these pants? Kind of grainy. I got this.
It's hard to see, but nothing obvious or glaring.
Well, the jury's going to have the photograph in evidence. Let's talk about the time, the pronouncement of death. You remember the questions on cross-examination about the pronouncement of death?
Yes.
And pronouncement of death is, I think you tested, explain again what the pronouncement of death is.
It's when someone is examined and determined to be dead. And that is when the time of death. It's for the state of Arizona, that's the accepted, agreed upon time of death.
Is that necessarily the time of the actual victim's death?
No, rarely, only in a hospital situation that the death is witnessed. Is it going to be the exact time of death?
And you examined the body in this case, right?
I did.
On February 1st?
Yes.
And if the time of death is 6:30 on January 30th, if the victim was killed 4 hours earlier, would your analysis of the body be consistent with a 4-hour earlier death?
Objection, speculation. She said she couldn't tell because of the length of time and the refrigeration that she didn't have that type of testing.
All right, sustained, but you can try to lay additional foundation.
We talked about the cooling, putting bodies in coolers and things like that, right?
Correct.
we talked about the decompensation and rigor mortis and the time setting of that, right?
Yes.
Right. And I know you're not CSI here. We're not watching a 30-minute show here. So the answer is
Objection to sidebar.
Was that?
Objection to sidebar.
I'm sorry. I would. No, it's
I
my
didn't understand
objection.
the objection. Are you requesting a sidebar?
No, it's to me, Your Honor. My narration. It's my narration. I strike that. So let me go to the question about decompensation and rigor and so forth, right? When someone's shot and killed and say they died, not the pronouncement, they died, what's the timeline for the jury about what's going on with the human body?
So the three things that we talked about is algor mortis, the cooling of the body after death. That's going to happen right away, instantly, until the body reaches ambient temperature, meaning room temperature, the temperature of the air around it. So typically the body is warm to touch. Most people are warm. And then over a period of time, it's going to get cool. Well, that's dependent on the environment that the body is in, underlying reason for the death. Those sorts of things all impact the algor mortis. Livor mortis is the pooling of the blood. Again, that happens. Typically, you can see it on the skin surface within 30 minutes to a couple of hours. It's going to be evident. At about 12 hours, it becomes what I called fixed, right? Where you push it, it no longer goes away. Prior to that, you're going to push it, it's going to blanch. So about 12 hours, it becomes fixed and it stays fixed. It doesn't ever change. So if I push on a body on the livor mortis lividity on the body and it's fixed, I know that person has been dead at least 12 hours, give or take, right? All these other things play a role, but that's generally speaking what we see. And the last of those is rigor mortis. That's the stiffening of the muscles after death. Usually that's going to set in within an hour or two. After someone dies, you're going to start to notice in the smaller muscles first, they're going to become stiff. So you're going to see it in the jaw, feel it in the jaw and the fingers first. And then it moves into the larger muscle groups. And it becomes firmer over a period of time up until that 10 to 12 hour mark again, when it reaches maximal strength, right? So at 12 hours, the jaw is going to be really firmly closed in that it will take a lot of force to open it. It's going to take a lot of force to break the muscle rigidity in the arms and legs. But that does pass over time. So it reaches its maximal around 12 hours, and then it starts to dissipate. And eventually, as the other decomposition processes start, then it goes away altogether and the body becomes very flaccid. But you'll have also green discoloration of the body, bloating, skin slip. All those things are going to be starting as well as when the rigor mortis is passing, this stuff starts to happen.
So you pretty much have a pretty solid understanding of what happens to a body after death. Would that be fair to say?
Yes.
So if someone come across a dead body, a body that's been shot or whatever it is, and hypothetically touch the body, no pulse, but the body is still warm, can you determine within a period of time if the body is still warm when the death happened?
Within a couple of hours, probably. If it hasn't, if it's in it depends on the environment that it's in again.
Sure, just a second, Your Honor. That's all the questions I have, Your Honor.
Thank you. Any questions for this witness from any of the jurors? All right. We see at least one.
Come on, guys. Let this poor lady go. She has bodies to take care of. This is just a waste of her time. I feel bad for her. But she seems to be used to it, right? Oh. See if I can unmute my mic without my son screaming. I don't know what the jury question is. Can't hear anything. Oh, they're done. They're done.
The jurors can ask questions. I'm sure you're familiar with that. So here's some of their questions. Question number 1, is internal pooling of blood consistent with the body being prone or supine during the time of death?
So the blood that was pooled within the body cavities, the 2 cavities that there was blood was the sac around the heart and in the right chest cavity. There was blood in there because of the gunshot wound injuries. The body, when it arrived to our office and at the time of examination, is going to always be in a supine position until we move it in a different position. And so it shifts with the positioning, but for the most part, once we take custody of the body, it's going to be in a supine position. So it's going to be pooled at the back of those surfaces just because of gravity.
So, I mean, but the question was directed to whether or not you can state an opinion based upon experience, knowledge, and training about whether the pooling of blood has any reflection on whether the body was prone or supine during the time of death. This juror is trying to get more information about whether the body, whether there's evidence that you can testify to as to whether the body was supine or prone during the time of death. At the time of death. I'm sorry.
I do not know.
Okay, another question is the internal wound consistent with the bullet tumbling inside the body?
I don't know. I just know the path that it took.
Another question are there any definitive findings with internal organs that show that blood has not moved since cell death in the organs? Parentheses, I'm trying to determine if body organs show the body was prone or supine at the time of cell death. or during cell death? And this particular question is directed towards the organs.
Directed towards what?
The organs. So is there any definitive findings with internal organs that show that blood has not moved since cell death in the organs?
After the heart stops beating, the blood is not moving other than when we reposition the body, which again is in that prone position. So the blood is going to be pooled in the organs on the same way that it pools on the skin surface as well.
Couple more questions. In your opinion, and all of these questions is, obviously if you know, or if you have a good basis to know and have foundation to know. If you don't know, that's obviously a fine answer. But the question is, in your opinion, is the path of the entry wound consistent with a shot from long or short range?
I don't know. It's not a contact wound.
Another question, in your opinion, is the entry wound consistent with a straight shot or at an angle?
The bullet takes an upward angle in the body. The trajectory of the bullet in the body is right to left, back to front, and upward within the body.
And that's within the body.
Correct. I do not know outside of that.
All right, very well. Excellent questions. I'll hand the questions to the clerk, and the lawyers can ask follow-up questions to the questions of the jurors. Mr. Jetty.
Real briefly, Dr. Tim, on the movement of the body, you've handled countless autopsies, correct?
Correct.
You've handled from where the body was found at scene and then it's transported to the coroner's office, right?
Yes.
That body has to be picked up, put in a body bag, and shipped, right?
Yes.
A lot of movement goes on, right?
Yes.
No more questions, Your Honor.
Defense? Any additional questions?
In relationship to that same question, I guess if I understood your answer, due to the movement of the body, the blood is moving due to gravity in the position that it's placed in, correct?
Yes.
So it's hard to say how it was closer at time of death.
Correct.
Okay, nothing further.
Any more questions or follow-up questions from any of the jurors for this witness? I see none. Is the witness excused? Yes.
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you, doctor. You may step down and you're excused. Make sure you. All right, the
Ron.
state can call its next witness. Yes.
Run before they
And while
ask-
they're doing that,
Okay.
so you've heard objections that I've been ruling upon. One of the frequent objections, more frequent than others anyway, has been leading. So let me explain what that is. A leading question is a question that suggests the answer as opposed to being open-ended. So there's cookies missing from the cookie jar. Mom says to Billy, Billy, isn't it true that your brother Bob stole the cookies from the cookie jar? The question suggests the answer, that is Bob. A non-leading question would be, Billy, do you know who stole the cookies from the cookie jar? Open-ended. And if he says yes, then a non-leading follow-up question would be, who stole the cookies from the cookie jar, as opposed to, it was Bobby, right? Now, non-leading questions, when a party calls a witness, they are not allowed to ask leading questions. It's their witness. They have to ask open-ended questions, either party. Cross-examination, a lawyer can ask leading questions, all right? So that's where these objections come from. Again, this is not a reflection on anyone's questioning here, any of the lawyers. It's just been a frequent objection, so, and we do it in front of you, so I wanted you to have some understanding of what we're doing, right? Thank you for your patience, and you can call your next witness.
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give in the matter before the court will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God.
If you would please come over here and take a seat on the witness stand.
I hope she's feisty. She has red hair.
Whenever you're ready.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Can you just briefly introduce yourself to the jury?
Yes, my name is Tara Helsel.
Do you mind if I call you Tara?
That's totally fine.
All right, Tara, where are you from?
I'm from Pittsburgh,
Is that microphone?
Her
You flew in
microphone's
this
off.
morning, right?
From Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, she said.
Long flight?
Pennsylvania.
Excuse me, I don't think, not your fault, I don't think your microphone's on. Yeah, there you go.
Is that better?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry.
And Tara, can you spell your name for the court reporter? Your last name too?
Yes. First name Tarah. Last name Helsel.
And what do you do for a living, Tara?
I am a forensic scientist and the manager of the forensics department at a company called RJ Lee Group.
And what does RJ Lee Group do?
So RJ Lee Group is a materials characterization laboratory, and it has a lot of different departments that offers a pretty wide range of scientific testing services. For example, we have a chemistry department that does things like water testing. We have a group that analyzes concrete, and we have many other departments. However, we also have a small criminal forensics department, which is the group that I'm a part of.
And what does that small forensic group do?
We specialize in
Residue analysis.
So, gunshot residue analysis is basically looking for particles that result from the discharge of a firearm, specifically particles that originate from the primer, which is one of the parts of a cartridge.
If I just use GSR for short, that's gunshot residue. Would that be an okay abbreviation?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So GSR, how many cases have you worked on doing a GSR analysis?
I have done analysis in over 700 cases, analyzing over 4,000 samples.
And how long you been doing that?
A little over 7 years now.
And what was your background before that?
I had a Bachelor of Science degree in forensic science from Waynesburg University. And then following graduating, I started at RJ Lee Group.
No one knows where Wayne's College is at. We just know where U of A is at. So where is Wayne's College at?
Waynesburg University is in southwestern Pennsylvania. It's kind of close to the West Virginia border.
Sorry, Waynesburg. Sorry.
Waynesburg,
Sorry
yes.
about that. Were you asked to do, you don't work for Santa Cruz County, do you?
I don't know.
And in your practice with RJ Lee, do you often get hired by jurisdictions to do GSR analysis?
Yes, absolutely. Our laboratory does gunshot residue analysis for agencies all throughout the United States and also beyond.
And were you asked to do anything work in this investigation?
Yes, I was.
What were you asked to do, Tara?
I was asked to analyze a gunshot residue collection kit for gunshot residue analysis.
All right, I'm going to show you. I'm going to get. Actually, I think I can have you do it, Tara. Do we have some scissors over there? All right, I'm going to have you do it. You don't mind doing a little work?
Sure. Okay.
I'm showing you up there as you get set up to do it is State Exhibit 130.
Okay.
Cut away. Judiciously, though. And for the record, the witness is opening Government Exhibit 130. Do you recognize the tape on that, Tara?
I do, yes.
Is that your tape?
Yes, this is the evidence tape that I put over the box upon completing the analysis.
And how do you know it's your evidence tape?
So over top of where the tape meets the box are my initials and then the date in which I sealed it.
Okay. And can you look inside there?
Yes.
What's inside there?
So inside of there is
You don't have to pull it. Just tell us what's inside there.
this basically this bubble wrapped bundle.
And what, do you know what's in the bubble wrap bundle?
Within there would be the gunshot residue kit that I analyzed.
Your Honor, I'm going to move to admit Government Exhibit 130 into evidence.
Sorry, can I get clarity? Is it to the box or to the contents?
Obviously, the contents of the box. You want to open
May I
that up?
approach the box and look inside?
Sure,
Thank you.
sure. Just keep it low, Tab.
Did she really just ask if he wants to put the box into evidence? Is that what she just really asked? Yeah.
No objections, Your Honor.
Exhibit 130 is admitted.
All right, Tara, can you just take stuff out of there then? And
Yes. So this bag was inside of the bubble wrap.
do you recognize that bag?
Yes.
That your bag?
This bag was not ours. This bag was originally sent with the evidence.
Oh, okay. And so can you open that bag?
Yes.
And inside that bag, what do we have?
This is the gunshot residue collection kit that I received in this case.
And what goes in a kit?
So this kit is composed of a number of stub samples. They're basically small vials that have an adhesive sampler inside that would, in theory, be dabbed onto an area of interest and attempt to pick up any particles that might be present.
Okay. And how many samplings are in there?
There should be 5.
Well, do you want to verify?
Should I open it?
Okay,
Yes.
open it.
Yes, there are 5.
Are they marked in any way?
Yes, they are marked with the numbers that were written on them when I received them, which is 1 through 5. And then whenever I received them, I also put on an RJ Lee Group sample label for each one. And those labels are also present.
And this is one of those situations, just for the court's record, is foundations going to be laid layer on the samplings. Those samplings come from, does it indicate where the samplings come from?
On the labels I put on, yes.
Where?
Sample number 1 is labeled as jacket 1. Sample number 2 is labeled as jacket parentheses 2. Sample number 3 is from pants. Sample number 4 is from shirt. And then sample number 5 is a collection blank.
And what's a collection blank? Plank?
Blank,
Blank.
yes.
BLANK.
Yes.
What's a collection blank?
So a collection blank is basically done to ensure that contamination is not occurring during collection. Generally speaking, they may be left open to the environment during collection to show that there were not particles in that environment. However, since I didn't collect the sample, I can't say for certain how it was used in this case.
Okay, but you received those from the Santa Cruz County Sheriff's Department?
Yes.
Do you remember the officer? Does it indicate anywhere in your report who sent those to you?
I cannot recall the name offhand.
Would your report help you refresh your recollection?
Yes.
Your permission to approach? Government Exhibit 40. I actually have Government Exhibit 40.1. Here, too. Did that refresh your recollection?
Yes.
Who sent those to you?
Detective Mario Barba,
Does it say what agency?
the Santa Cruz County Sheriff's Office.
And just so I have it written down, 1 and 2 samples come from the jacket. Number 3, the pants.
Yes.
4, a shirt,
Yes.
and 5 is a blank.
Correct.
Kind of like a control group, like a control.
Yes, that would be another term for a control.
Okay, and you did a GSR analysis on those 4. Or did you do it on the blank one too?
Yes, on
Okay.
all of the samples,
Right.
including the blank.
I don't know what just happened to the sound.
Results on that.
There we go.
They were all negative for gunshot residue.
And what does that mean?
Wasn't present on the.
I don't know
I
what's
can't
going
say
on with
why
the sound.
there were not particles there, but just simply were no particles there.
One of the reasons, so I just can be completely forthright, one of the reasons is the sampling had blood on it, right? Like one of the shirts had blood on it?
So I didn't receive the actual garments.
Okay. And what does blood do?
So blood can mask gunshot residue. So if there is blood on a surface, it could cover up particles that may be present so that you wouldn't be able to see those particles.
But those 5 vials, those samples showed the jacket, 2 of them on the jacket, pants, shirt, and the sample, no GSR.
Correct.
Just a moment, Your Honor.
Thank you. Cross-examination?
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
What is the distance that gunshot residue might show up?
So that really varies. Typically, the cloud of particulate that is expelled during a discharge can travel several feet, usually within about 4 to 6 feet. However, environmental conditions can also make that travel farther. And then in addition to that, there are some particles not from that cloud, but actually on the bullet that can travel farther distances.
If I have gunshot residue on my left sleeve here as I'm pointing to my left arm and I brush hard enough and everything, could I affect whether there will be any signs of it?
Yes, gunshot residue can be easily removed. So things like environmental factors or activity can cause particles to be removed from a surface.
And if I take my right arm that still has particles and rub it against my co-counsel like I'm doing here and illustrating, is it possible that the gunshot residue would show up on her jacket?
Yes, so just like gunshot residue is easily removed, it's also easily transferable from surface to surface.
What is the reasonable time that you would, based on your knowledge, that one should do this testing?
It really depends. So it depends on the circumstances. So studies have shown that with normal activity, gunshot residue on the hands will be removed within about 5 hours or so. With clothing, it really depends. If there are particles on a garment and that garment remains undisturbed, the particles will remain indefinitely because they don't break down or degrade. However, if that garment is subject to much activity, coming into contact with things, handling, all of those could be factors that could remove particles.
If the clothing tested was put in a bag for storage together, rubbing upon each other, could that affect the result?
It could cause particles to move from garment to garment if they are all bagged together.
Right arm onto my co-counsel. Could it remove it from my right arm and now only be on her jacket?
Yes, it would depend on how many particles are there and the extent of activity, but yes, that could be possible.
The gunshot residue needs to have exposure to an item in order for it to possibly show up on it, correct?
Yes, so if gunshot residue is on something, it's from either being near the discharge of a firearm or from coming into contact with something with gunshot residue on it.
Now you tested, what was the date of your testing?
So the testing was done in July of 2023. So the report was July 25th, so it would have been probably within the days leading up to that.
So you said July or June? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, July.
Thank you. So this is close to 6 months after the date of the offense, which has been noted here as January 30th. Did you know that?
I did not.
Okay. Let me strike that. more reasonably would be, if you're going to test, you should have tested closer to the date of the offense would be a better choice, correct?
Once the samples are collected, no, because the particles don't break down or degrade. They're not going to go anywhere. So as soon as those items are contained, whether it's the samples or the articles, whether they're tested immediately or months later, that's not going to change.
What date was the collection made?
I'm not sure what the date of collection was.
Do you have anything in your report that says it?
Not the date of collection because we did not perform the collection.
So you don't know if it was collected in June,
I don't.
May?
I don't.
So if it hadn't been collected early, that could affect the lack of results, correct?
Not from the garment, because if the garments themselves are contained, again, those particles aren't going to go anywhere. So, for example, we've tested garments that have been in storage for a decade and have found gunshot residue particles on them.
If these clothing items that you tested was placed in a plastic bag and moved around, could those particles, if they're there, show up on the plastic bag rather than the clothing?
Depending on the extent of activity and how many particles are there, yes, that would be possible.
Now, we have seen what appears to be a gunshot back, a little bit to the side. That's the entrance wound, okay?
Okay.
All right, and you don't know that, right?
No.
Okay. Now I want to show you something. It's marked, but I'm not going to be, just want to discuss this so you could see it first, okay?
Okay.
May approach the witness? Yes. And just for the record, it is marked as defense HH. I just want you to look at it and then I'll ask you a question in a minute, okay?
Okay.
Tell me when you had a chance to examine it.
Okay.
Now I pointed to an item. It's not emitted yet. It's a photo in this case of a backpack, correct?
Correct.
And would you say that's a pretty good sized backpack?
I would say so, yes.
It's kind of plump, looks kind of fat, typical height of a backpack, right?
Yes.
And backpacks are usually worn on your back, right?
I would presume so, yes.
So if I have this size of a backpack covering my back, wouldn't it be smart to test the backpack for gunshot residue rather than clothing underneath the backpack?
It could be helpful. It would depend, again, on the circumstances.
Well, let's make this more clear. If this backpack was on a subject, okay, that is now deceased, following me?
Yes.
Okay. And it's kind of wide and it's about yay high. I'm reflecting, I don't know, 3 feet tall or whatever. If it's covering up the clothing, like the jacket or the shirt, isn't it true that gunshot residue cannot penetrate through this backpack to land on the items below it?
Correct. If there were particles basically dispersing that area, and that backpack is the outermost garment, that could block the particles from getting to lower layers.
And you were never given a backpack, were you?
I was not.
You received a jacket, correct?
I didn't receive the jacket. I received samples that were labeled as coming from the jacket.
How big are those samples?
They are small vials. They are the vials in front of me.
Can you hold one up again?
Yes. They're these small vials.
Does it tell you on those vials where it came from
So
on the clothing?
that information was provided to me from Detective Barba. So the samples were labeled 1 through 5. He clarified to me which of each sample came from. So he clarified that 1 and 2 were from the jacket, 3 was from pants, 4 was from a shirt, and the 5th was a collection blank.
You don't know where on the item?
No.
So far as you know, they're underneath the backpack.
Yeah, I can't speak to the circumstances around the items or the collection, as I only received samples that were already collected.
And whatever customers that come and need your assistance in your lab, they don't tell you when they collected it?
Not always, no.
Would be helpful, wouldn't it?
Not necessarily. That's not going to change whether or not gunshot residue is present on the surface.
So this is not necessarily scientific or conclusive. It's just more of a helpful tool.
It is scientific in that it's based on a scientific analysis, but basically this analysis can just tell you whether or not particles are present. It can never say why there are or are not particles, or what scenarios could have caused this result.
Pass the witness.
Redirect examination.
Terry, you saw the image that defense counsel showed you of the backpack?
Yes,
Yeah, and that looked like a school backpack?
it just looked like a standard backpack.
And do you know the collection procedures that Detective Barba used,
I don't.
or the determination of which samples to send to you?
No,
That's for Detective Barba, right?
correct.
Your job was to look at those 5 vials and see if there's any gunshot residue, right?
Correct.
You know what bullet wipe is?
I'm familiar with it, yes.
What is bullet wipe?
Basically, it is from basically the passage of a bullet through a garment.
Do you know if there was any bullet wipe found in this case?
I don't know.
That's all the questions I have, Your Honor.
Thank you. Any questions for the witness from the jurors? We do. Very well.
She doesn't know anything, guys. Well, the good news is they can't have a lot of questions for her if she doesn't know anything. Just one, maybe. I'm really dying to know if the media went to their field trip with them. I know they didn't go yet, but I need to know.
Juror number 10, I read this one word as experimenting. Is that correct? Okay, just want to make sure. All right, question from one of the jurors. Is your determination done by empirical, experimenting, or with literature?
So the basis of the analysis, there's plenty of literature around the history of this type of analysis. Basically, we use an instrument called the scanning electron microscope to analyze these samples and looking for the presence of combinations of lead, barium, and antimony, which are specific to the discharge of a firearm. But all of that is based on really decades of literature and research in the industry.
Follow-up questions from the question of the juror. Mr.
Yes,
Chair.
sure. Tara, would that be considered generally accepted scientific procedures and methods?
Yes.
Any follow-up questions from the defense?
No, sir.
Okay, this guy's not doing a bad job. This guy is fine. This guy right here is the way they should all be doing what they're supposed to be doing right now. I don't have a problem with him.
May this witness be excused.
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you very much. You can step down and you're excused. Let me just talk to council real a moment.
Billy, you're going to put us on mute for the last minute of this video? Rude. I wish she was feistier. I can kind of barely hear him, but not really.
Sorry. We're going to take our evening recess. Remember the admonition of the court. We will begin again tomorrow morning at 8:30 a.m. Please be in the jury room at 8:30 punctually.
Okay, we got through day 6 p.m. And this one was really short. It was only 2.5 hours. Sorry about the F-bomb dropped in my background in the middle of the video, but you know, that happens sometimes. It's the way the world is. And then I'm going to try to get the next one out as soon as possible because I'm pretty curious as well. I mean, I know the ending, but I want to see this field trip. I want to see if anyone makes any valid point at all about him being innocent or guilty at all through this. I wonder if Mr. Kelly's going to take the stand. I wonder if Mrs. Kelly's going to take the stand. We will find out. Thanks, guys, for coming out. I appreciate it. I'll see you next time. Bye.